AudoSD. By the way, maybe we could try to work with it, but right now I don't see any priority for the buyer at all. The nearest stops have already been passed. The next stop where a buyer might appear.
A link to all the information is on the YouTube profile.
Well, it's really hard to say anything here. There's a kind of staircase pattern here. So for me, maybe it would be something around this area. So theoretically, we've passed this one, but for now, we're not moving down. According to the candlestick analysis, there isn't a single proper candle. This means that if they move sideways, and sideways ranges are mostly broken upwards by buyers, there's a chance we might go higher now and try to update the trend's maximum again. But if the seller now shows a strong candle, there's a chance we'll go down to the next area, right? So those are the possible scenarios. For now, it's moving sideways here. So there's nothing to do yet. We need to wait a little. But damn, I've spent so much time on this pair and I'd really like to work it out. So if anything, we'll just wait a bit. See, there's another attempt, but the buyer still isn't succeeding. They're constantly facing resistance. So for me, another small sideways range is forming here. I want to see what will happen with this sideways movement. For now, my priority is slightly with the seller, only because the seller broke through the local level and there was no reaction. Right now, basically, we've produced this candle out of nowhere and can't let the buyer move up. But we're not letting the seller go down either because there's a strong trend movement behind us. As I mentioned earlier, yes, in some cases, the buyer, or rather the seller, was only able to reach their recently established local level. And specifically in this case, that happened almost twice. You see, there was a pause here. He didn't reach it. There was a pause here. He went lower. Here there was a pause. And again, he didn't reach it. So there's a chance that from this point, the buyer might pick up again. That's exactly why you can't immediately enter for a decline here. But look, right now I have something more or less similar to when the buyer steps in and produces an insanely big candle. But I look at the history and realize that basically for both sides, such candles have been pretty normal lately. So they reach very quickly and unexpectedly the nearest stopping point from where there was a single downward candle, after which the movement down didn't continue. Here we produced a strong downward candle and that's it. Everything stalled. In other words, the buyer stopped it. Now I can draw this conclusion because the minimum was updated and the downward movement didn't continue. The movement went upward. It's a pity that it was a very, very sharp impulse. So now basically you can confidently open a position for an upward move here. The only thing is that this was a sharp impulse. The candle is strong and you need to try to somehow close out such a candle. So either there will be a rejection from here now, or the next candle will try to close this candle at least halfway. And in this situation, it's better to wait. Basically, I'm only losing time. That way I can save myself from opening too many recovery trades. So that's why I think it would be right either to open an entry here for 4 minutes using a recovery trade, or to wait for some correction after such an impulse and only then enter for an upward move. There is resistance above, so for now I won't open an upward entry. By the way, the volume is increasing only on the buyer's side. 45 seconds until the end of this candle, I observed that there was some kind of correction. The area of interest was at the top, but now it's been pushed down to the middle. Now it is already playing a restraining role. Also, I see that a large volume is now appearing at the top, replacing the seller who was originally there. Here, the 5-tick chart, the area of interest is pushing, right? So in this case, I can try to take the first entry for 2 minutes upward. I won't use 4 minutes because in principle, the seller should have already shown themselves by now, but they showed weakly and the buyer bought out this candle. That's it. The pushing area of interest still remains in the third block for now. Therefore, there is a chance that the movement towards the maximum may continue. That's it. Looking at the cluster in the end, at the very top at the close, we have zeros, meaning there is a loss of strength. If the seller is present at this pause, a pullback may happen now. Well, guys, this candle is just abnormal. I have no words for it. It was made basically in the direction of the trend after a correction. We can easily bounce off this area. We are very close to it. There's 1 minute left here. All right, I'll try to look for an entry to go short here. Let me, as we move forward, mark the next stopping points for myself. For example, from this top, one candle was formed. I don't think this would be of much interest to a buyer in such a trend, to come in and bounce off such a stop. We might bounce off it, but that bounce would be insignificant. That's why the nearest proper place where a seller might appear, I've marked it, is very, very far away. So here we have 30 seconds left until the end. No seller has appeared as strength is lost, and we're still continuing to move higher. All right, here there are 5 seconds left until the end. We take the profit, return the amount. Let's think about it. With a pullback, an 8-tick buyer at the top is very little. Here, it was much stronger. The volume is increasing due to the buyer, but some seller is also appearing. If I see resistance in the cluster, there's a chance that after this high is taken out, a pullback movement will occur. For now, we're bouncing off exactly, but there are significantly more sellers in this area, so there's a pullback. You see there was a weak buyer at the top and a bit of selling came in by volume. We were in a zone, meaning the buyer lost strength on the previous candle, and on this candle right at the very top, there was the nearest local pause plus a bit of obvious selling, and that's the pullback we saw. But now we're buying up that pullback, right? In other words, we're dominating the seller. So we can assume that the seller is rather weak in this area. Let's see what happens after this high is taken out. You see, still at the top. Now something is finally starting to show up. There's a breakout and there's a pullback from the seller. See how it's getting bigger? There, that's the very moment. Why? Weakness on this candle at the top and in the cluster. When we entered the area, there was no volume at the top for further upward movement. So here comes the pullback. The nearest local level where I could enter with the trend is probably very far away. So most likely that's it for this situation. But I noticed some volume here. No, that's it. The volume is already gone. So this volume was only in this segment, right? It was most likely probably large as a result of these particular candles here. So the seller showed themselves, look, and immediately there's a buyback. In other words, buyers are putting up resistance. I like this. Here's AUD USD. I would try to enter a buy here because this looks a bit like a breakout. Maybe. We still have 20 seconds left until the end of the candle. The candle isn't closing very well. It's not just not very strong, it's actually closing weak. But we have to take into account that this candle was red and now it's green. And this is after breaking the high. All right, there are 3 seconds left until the end. That's another win. And it's not just a win, it's a breakout of this high. And seeing this information, basically, I'm ready to open another buy entry here since that's how things are going for us. It's extremely unlikely that we're going to bounce back down again from these highs. The main goal here is to update the high according to the trend. So in any case, the only real question that we need to consider here is simply how much time it will actually take to get there and nothing else. The seller looks very weak and the buyer looks very strong. All right, I'm playing around with the color of the zone here. I like the red one, so I'll leave it red for now. There are 5 seconds left until the end here. This is already the third one, right? That's already, in fact, the third win on this pair for an upward move. This is how you can just sit, read, wait, and read again, catching opportunities. Let me also just check how the blue color really looks. Interesting. Seems pretty good too, but for now, let's try purple. All right, I've had purple for quite a long time now, so to be honest, I really want to continue sticking with red. Well, it's like, damn, you know, just go in again here for an upward move. All right, we're heading toward the main point. It kind of feels like a freebie, but at the same time, it's not that interesting. There's a big distance here. I would have entered somewhere maybe, but no, the candles are too big. The candles are big. It could shoot up here very quickly. A seller is appearing. Not significant, but we need to see how the buyer reacts to it. All right, the volume is mostly increasing on the buyer's side. There's a divergence on the 6. There's a seller at the top, and I would use it like this. If there's a pullback movement now, I'll use that pullback to my advantage, right? So I have some kind of clue. I have a divergence. I understand that some kind of pullback is going to happen. I can wait for this pullback and use it to my advantage. Here, damn, the divergence is strong. A 56 lot seller. Where is the seller from? I'll open AUD USD right away, just in case, because the movement is very strong and I find it hard to believe that the seller could be strong. But as they say, that's just hard for me to believe. I don't know what's on the seller's minds. So this is just a kind of pause where the buyer tried to push higher, got shut down, and we saw a single candle. Yes, that same stop. We're pulling back from it now. Well, it's not a serious pause, but it can't stop such a strong buyer. So guys, for now, we're waiting near the opening point for another 2 minutes. All right, 5 seconds left. We're near the opening point. Neither here nor there. It's in the plus, of course, but that's a huge pin bar. A huge pin bar. So that's already the 4th win, even if it's not a big one. But we're continuing to move higher. So the move down didn't happen. That's already good. That's good, for sure. For some reason, the candle issued by the buyers was rather weak. Most likely, they encountered resistance, there was a divergence, and this can even be considered as the sellers holding them back. By the way, the volume on the sellers in this candle increased more. The area of interest remained above. The sellers managed to push the body lower and close below the area of interest. So this is bad for further upward movement. Plus volume is on the seller's side. There are 2 counter arguments against entering a buy position. I'll take these counter arguments into account, and since I've already been sitting on this pair for so long, I'll try to look for some other situation.